I gave her everything. Not in the poetic, exaggerated sense. I mean everything. My time, my attention, my future. She didn't ask for it. I volunteered it willingly, eagerly, as if the act of loving her was the highest form of achievement a man could hope for. And for a while it worked. We had the dinners under dim lights, the long drives with no destination, the quiet Sunday mornings filled with shared coffee and playlists we built together. People would smile at us in grocery stores. Her friends said we were the kind of couple that gave them hope. I thought I was living the dream. But if I'm honest, it wasn't love, it was worship, and that was my first mistake. It ended on a Thursday. I came home early from a project, nothing dramatic, just a deadline that moved, and I found her packing. No yelling, no tears, just her folding sweaters into a suitcase like she was brushing lint off a coat. "I'm leaving," she said. Not, "We need to talk." Not, "This is hard for me too." Just, "I'm leaving." No apology, no warning. Just a cold surgical exit from a life we'd built. I stood there watching her zip the bag, and all I could think was, what did I do wrong? For 3 days I didn't eat, barely spoke. I moved from room to room like a ghost, trying to understand where the break had started. A text I missed, a word I shouldn't have said, some invisible point where her love simply expired. But the silence she left behind offered no answers. I replayed everything. Our first date, our last kiss, every look in between. I tried to see the signs, but all I could see was myself giving more and more while asking nothing in return. And now I had nothing. One night about a week later, I found myself scrolling through an old bookmarked essay. I couldn't sleep. I was looking for something, anything to explain the numbness spreading inside me. It was a quote I had saved years ago from a philosopher I didn't really understand back then. "Love is the bait nature uses, a sweet illusion, meant not for your happiness, but for the survival of the species." Arthur Schopenhauer. I stared at the words, my mind still foggy, my chest still hollow, but something in that sentence struck a strange chord. What if this pain wasn't personal? What if love, the way I'd understood it, romantic, grand, all-consuming, was never meant to last? What if it wasn't even real? The thought made me recoil at first. It sounded cynical, almost cruel, like giving up on something sacred, but I couldn't ignore the sense of recognition it brought, like someone had finally put words to the storm inside me. I remembered something else I'd read too, this time from a Stoic, not a pessimist. It's not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them, Epictetus. Could it be that my suffering wasn't caused by her leaving, but by what I expected from her in the first place? Could it be that I had handed her the blueprint to my peace, my worth, my identity, and now, without her, I didn't know who I was? The thought sat in my chest like a brick. I wasn't just grieving her. I was grieving the version of myself I had built around her. And that version had no spine. He lived for validation. He chased beauty. He mistook attention for intimacy. He offered the world and called it love, not realizing that love given blindly is often just submission, dressed in poetry. I began to see how I had betrayed myself long before she ever packed that suitcase. That night I didn't cry, I didn't rage, I just sat still. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something other than pain. I felt awareness. I was beginning to see that maybe love wasn't what I thought it was, that maybe Schopenhauer wasn't trying to make us bitter. Maybe he was trying to make us see. Maybe Stoicism wasn't cold detachment, but the first step toward real freedom. The next morning I woke up early. I brewed coffee like I used to, but this time it was for one. No music, no distractions, just silence and the sound of me finally breathing with intention. I cleaned the kitchen, folded the blankets, wrote a single sentence in a notebook I hadn't touched in years. She left. But the man she left behind isn't the one who's rising now. That was the beginning. Not of healing. Healing is too slow a word. It was the beginning of discipline, of reclaiming control over a mind that had been too long seduced by fantasy, of standing in front of a shattered identity and choosing to build something better. Not for her, not for anyone else, for me. And maybe, just maybe, for the first time in my life, I was ready to be alone without being lost. There's a strange emptiness that follows heartbreak. Not the kind that screams, but the kind that lingers. quietly like dust. You can't quite wipe off. It's there when you brush your teeth in silence. It's in the passenger seat when no one's sitting there. It stares at you from across the table at dinner, asking a question you don't know how to answer. Who are you now that she's gone? For weeks, I lived in that space. I wasn't falling apart anymore. I was just stuck, suspended between memories and meaning. Every time I tried to move forward, I'd get dragged back by old habits, checking her socials, reading old messages, wondering if she was hurting like I was. But deep down, I knew she wasn't, and that was a hard pill to swallow. I kept going back to that Schopenhauer quote, "Love is the bait nature uses." At first, it sounded cruel, like someone bitter, trying to ruin the idea of love for everyone else. But the more I sat with it, the more I realized it wasn't cruelty. It was clarity. Brutal, maybe, but clarity nonetheless. I started reading more. Not just Schopenhauer, but the Stoics, Marcus Seneca, Epictetus, men who had walked through fire without losing themselves, men who saw life not as a fairy tale, but as a test of character. There was one line from Epictetus that hit me like a brick. When something happens, the only thing in your power is your attitude toward it. You can either accept it or be miserable. I wrote it down and stuck it on my fridge. Every time I passed it, it forced me to look at my pain differently, not as something that happened to me, but something that was now with me, something I had to respond to, not escape from. That's when the shift began. It started small. I muted her number, deleted our photos, took the playlist we made together and replaced it with silence. But silence has a way of revealing what noise tries to hide. And in that silence, I saw something I hadn't noticed before. I had built my entire identity around being someone she would love, not someone I respected, not someone I even really knew. Just a man molded to fit someone else's dream. Every decision I made in that relationship had a question attached. Would she like this? Would this make her happy? Would this keep her from leaving? But I never once asked, is this right for me? That realization cut deeper than the breakup itself, because it meant I hadn't just lost a woman, I had abandoned myself long ago. So I started writing, not to her, not for anyone else, just to me. I needed to hear my own voice again. The journal entries weren't pretty. Some were angry. Others were confused. A few felt like desperate cries into a void. But buried in those pages was a quiet truth I couldn't ignore. I had fallen for an illusion. Not just the illusion of her, but the illusion of love itself. The way we're taught to see it, the movies, the songs, the fairy tales. They teach us that love will complete us, save us, make life worth living. But what if that's the trap? What if love in its most intoxicating form isn't a divine gift, but a biological trick? Schopenhauer thought so. He said nature uses love to get us to reproduce, that it makes us feel like we found the one, not because we have, but because our instincts recognize someone who might make good offspring. That sounds cold, mechanistic, but honestly, it made sense. I wasn't obsessed with her because she was perfect. I was obsessed because something ancient in me believed she would make me whole. And when she left, it wasn't just grief I felt. It was withdrawal, like coming down from a drug. That's when I realized something else. I wasn't healing because I was still clinging to the illusion. And until I let it go, I would never be free. So I made a decision. I wouldn't try to date someone new. I wouldn't drown my pain in distractions or validation or another person's affection. I wouldn't numb it. I would face it. I would sit in the discomfort, let it wash over me, let it teach me, because maybe pain isn't the enemy. Maybe pain is the teacher. One night I was talking to a friend about everything. He had gone through a nasty divorce a few years back. Still bitter, still angry. He told me I was wasting my time reading old philosophers and trying to find meaning. He said, "You're just hurting, man. Stop trying to intellectualize it." I nodded. But inside I disagreed because I wasn't trying to avoid the hurt. I was trying to understand it, to master it, not to become cold, but to become clear. There's a difference. Stoicism doesn't teach us to feel nothing. It teaches us not to be ruled by what we feel. And that was the beginning of my emotional discipline. I stopped asking why she left. I started asking why I gave her the power to destroy me. And slowly I started taking that power back. I stopped checking her page, stopped wondering what she was doing, who she was, seeing if she missed me, because none of that mattered anymore. What mattered was this: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius. I read that every night before bed. Some nights it felt like a shield, other nights like a whisper barely holding me together. But night after night it started to become true, and I knew then this pain wasn't breaking me, it was revealing me. I used to think she broke me, that she walked away from something beautiful and left me behind to pick up the shattered pieces. But the more I sat with my pain, the more I realized she wasn't the villain in the story. She was human, and I had made her more than that. I had painted her into something she never claimed to be. I saw her as salvation, not a partner. I looked at her like a fixed star in my sky, something eternal, unchanging. But she was never that. She was a person, a woman shaped by her own experiences, her own fears, her own instincts, just like me. And the moment I stopped seeing her through the lens of loss, I saw her for the first time. That was the turning point. One afternoon, I opened a blank page in my journal and wrote a letter to her, not to send, but to understand. I wrote about everything: how much I gave, how much I expected in return, and how deeply I believed it would last. I told her about the nights I spent wondering what I could have done differently, the guilt, the anger, the grief. I laid it all out without filters or pride. Then near the end, I wrote something that surprised even me. You didn't break me, I broke the illusion, and I meant it, because what really hurt wasn't losing her. It was losing the fantasy I built around her, the story where she was perfect, where we were destined, where nothing could go wrong. But love isn't a myth. It's a mirror, and sometimes what it reflects back isn't romantic or poetic. It's uncomfortable. It shows you where you've been weak, where you've been naive, where you've been depending on someone else to carry your worth. That letter was my release. After I finished writing, I didn't cry. I didn't spiral. I didn't even feel angry. I felt free. I folded the letter, walked out to the backyard, and dropped it into the fire pit. I watched the paper curl and blacken, turning my old pain into ash. Not as a dramatic gesture, but as a quiet ritual. A final goodbye, not to her, but to the illusion I had carried for far too long. That night, I slept deeper than I had in weeks, and in the morning, I began rebuilding on my own terms. I started small, a new routine. Mornings began with silence and breath work. I stopped reaching for my phone first thing. Instead, I opened Meditations by Marcus Aurelius and read just one page. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. It grounded me, reminded me that life isn't promised. That time spent clinging to the past is time stolen from the present. I made breakfast for one and learned to enjoy it. I went on long walks without music, just me and the sound of the wind against the trees. I took up carpentry again, a hobby I had let go of during the relationship. There was something deeply satisfying about shaping wood with my hands, turning chaos into structure. I didn't feel like I was moving on. I felt like I was coming home, and slowly I started to see that she wasn't the center of my pain. My attachment was. It wasn't her fault that I had built my world around her. That was my choice. I had ignored the signs, dismissed my own needs, and allowed myself to believe that love meant surrender. But Stoicism teaches us something different. It teaches us that love without boundaries is not love, it's dependency. That virtue, clarity, and resilience must come from within. That expecting someone else to hold your peace is a recipe for suffering. I thought of another quote from Schopenhauer. We are deceived by nature to serve her ends. But once the end is achieved, the illusion vanishes. And for the first time, I didn't resent that truth because I saw the gift within the deception. She had done what nature demanded, captivated, connected, and moved on. But now I was doing what discipline demanded. I was rebuilding not to attract another, not to prove my worth, not to spite the past, but to become someone I could respect when no one else was watching. That was the quiet strength Stoicism promised, and I was beginning to feel it in my bones. Some friends told me I was being too serious, that I needed to get back out there, that the best way to move on was to find someone new. But I didn't want someone new. I wanted someone real, and that started with me. So I waited, not out of fear, but out of respect for myself. One afternoon, I passed by a mirror in my hallway. I stopped and looked not at the surface, but beneath it. And for the first time, I didn't see a man begging to be loved. I saw a man learning to love wisely, and that made all the difference. It had been 5 months since I last heard from her. Long enough for the edges of her memory to dull. Long enough to find peace in silence. My days had grown steady, quiet mornings, honest work, simple meals. There was a rhythm to my solitude now. Not lonely, just still. But peace, it turns out, is always waiting to be tested. It happened on a Tuesday. I had just come back from the gym, shoes muddy from the trail. My phone lit up as I stepped inside, a number I still knew by heart. Though I had long deleted her name, a message. Short, simple. Hey, can we talk? I froze. Not because I missed her, not because I wanted her back, but because for the first time since she left, I didn't know what I felt. I stared at the screen for a while, not moving, not reacting. A part of me remembered everything. The warmth, the way she smiled at me across the table, the way she'd reach for my hand when she laughed. Another part remembered the silence, the bags packed without warning, the complete absence of apology. I didn't respond, not right away. Instead, I sat down on the porch and watched the sun set behind the hills. I needed space not to decide whether to reply, but to remember who I was now. The old me would have replied in seconds, desperate for closure or reconnection, maybe even revenge dressed up as forgiveness. But the man I was now had learned the cost of chasing what once hurt him. So I waited. That night I pulled out my journal. She is not the test I wrote I am. And in that moment I understood this wasn't about her returning. It was about me not leaving myself again. 2 days passed, then another message came. I know I hurt you. I wasn't ready. Then I made a mistake. I'll admit those words stirred something in me. Not hope, but curiosity. What had changed for her? Why now? And that's when the twist came. In her next message, she confessed something that took the air out of my lungs. I was with someone else, someone close to you. Think you might already know. She didn't name him. She didn't have to. I did know. It had crossed my mind once, briefly, months ago. A passing thought I buried because it was too cruel to entertain. My half-brother, not someone I was close to. We shared blood but little else. Grew up in separate households. Reconnected in adulthood with forced civility, but no real bond. Apparently they had met once at a mutual event, kept in contact. The timing of their relationship overlapped mine, and now it was over. She was reaching out not from clarity but from collapse. The realization hit hard, but not in the way I expected. I didn't feel rage. I didn't even feel betrayed. I felt clear. For the first time, I could see the entire arc for what it was. She wasn't reaching out because she had grown. She was reaching out because her safety net had snapped. She wasn't choosing me. She was retreating to me. And I wasn't a harbor anymore. I was the mountain. That night, I walked alone under the cold stars. I didn't need advice. I didn't need closure. I just needed to remember the truth. I had worked so hard to build. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. Seneca. And right now I wasn't suffering, I was witnessing. Her message wasn't a new beginning, it was my final test. The next morning I replied, "Thank you for your honesty. I hope you find what you're looking for. But I'm not the same man anymore." I left it at that. No anger, no bitterness, just a line in the sand I didn't need to explain. She didn't reply. And that was fine because for the first time, I had said no. Not from ego, but from alignment. That week I visited my brother. He didn't expect me. He looked surprised when I knocked and even more confused when I hugged him. He started to speak, but I stopped him. "It's done," I said. "I'm not here to talk about her." And I wasn't. I was there because I realized something important. Holding on to resentment ties you to the people who hurt you. Letting go sets you free, I told him. I hoped he was doing better, that whatever happened between them wasn't my concern anymore. He nodded quietly, ashamed. I left without judgment. That day, I understood something that no book could have taught me. Sometimes your stoic growth becomes the liberation someone else needs too. If I had chosen revenge, I would have justified his shame. If I had clung to bitterness, I would have poisoned my own peace. But by choosing dignity, I gave us both a door out. Later that night, I lit a candle and wrote one last line in my journal. You can love someone, forgive them, and still choose never to go back. That is not weakness. That is clarity. After everything, after the heartbreak, the silence, the messages, and the final letting go, my life grew quiet again. But this time, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt earned. I had passed a test not by defeating anyone, but by mastering myself. And in that mastery, I found something unexpected. Space, the kind of space where something new could take root. Not another relationship, not a rebound or a distraction, but meaning something I hadn't truly had before. That's when the idea came to me. It wasn't planned. It wasn't strategic. It just felt right. I'd always loved working with my hands, wood tools, the quiet logic of building things. So I opened a small workshop in the back of my garage. At first, it was just for me, a sanctuary where thought became form, where time slowed down, but soon word got around. A neighbor stopped by one morning asking if I could teach his teenage son how to use a lathe. The boy Jordan had been getting into trouble at school. Angry, withdrawn, lost. I agreed without thinking twice. He showed up the next weekend. Head down, earbuds, and like most kids that age. He didn't say much at first, but once I showed him how to cut his first piece of pine, his eyes changed, focused, still present. That one lesson turned into 2, then 3, then 5. Soon there were 3 boys showing up every Saturday, all from different homes, all carrying stories. They didn't know how to talk about. I didn't press. I just taught them how to build things and let the rest come when it was ready. They started calling the garage, the shop. It stuck. One day, Jordan stayed behind after the others had left. He was quiet. Then suddenly he said, "She left me." I nodded, waiting. She said I was too intense, that I scared her off. But I was just trying to show her I cared. You know, he looked at me like he was asking for permission to hurt. I leaned against the workbench and said, "Yeah, I do know." He wiped his eyes and asked, "So what do I do now?" I paused, then answered with something I wish someone had told me at his age. You don't chase her, you don't beg, you don't collapse. You remember who you were before she showed up, and you get back to him. You build from there. He nodded slowly, not fully understanding, but feeling the weight of it. Then I added, "And next time, don't make her your whole sky. Let her be part of your weather, but you. You're the one holding the ground." That's when I saw it. This wasn't just a workshop anymore. It was a place where broken young men came to learn how not to break, where strength wasn't about muscles or pride, but patience, control, vision. Jordan started coming early, left late. He carved a wooden plaque one day when no one was watching. I found it nailed to the wall above the entrance. Discipline over desire. I didn't say a word, just nodded. He got it. This was real strength, not the kind that roars, but the kind that endures. The kind that doesn't get headlines, but holds the line when everything else is falling apart. And the best part, none of it came from chasing anything. It came from letting go. Stoicism had taught me many things, but this was the lesson that echoed the loudest: waste. No more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Marcus Aurelius, that's what I was doing. Now, not theorizing, not preaching, just showing up. One nail, one cut, one boy at a time. I wasn't trying to be anyone's hero. I just wanted to be solid ground. Because in a world full of noise, anger, and romantic illusions, being grounded is its own kind of rebellion and its own kind of freedom. It's strange how something that once hurt you deeply can over time lose its power entirely. The same road that once made my chest tighten now just felt like a road I was walking, a familiar trail that we used to walk together. Same dirt beneath my boots. Same trees casting long shadows in the late afternoon sun. Same wooden bench at the overlook. But something was different now, me. I didn't come here to relive anything. I didn't come to remember her. I came here to remember myself. Man who stood at this very spot months ago, shattered and searching, and now I stood here still. But I was no longer looking for anything, just watching. The world kept moving. The wind swept across the valley like it always had. The birds still chased the sky like they didn't know heartbreak existed. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to hold on to anything. Not her, not the past, not even the pain. I pulled out my journal. Its pages were worn now, ink-stained and creased. I flipped to a fresh page and wrote, "She was not the test I was." And that's when it hit me. Every challenge, every betrayal, every late-night ache and quiet morning alone, it had all been preparing me to see, not to see her differently, to see life differently. The Stoics taught that nothing is truly lost, only transformed. That pain, when understood, becomes purpose. That love, when no longer idolized, becomes insight. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't proud. I was just awake. That's the thing about clarity. It doesn't roar. It doesn't announce itself with fireworks or fanfare. It just arrives. It shows up like a quiet friend sits beside you and reminds you, you're okay now. You made it through. And I closed the journal, took one last look at the horizon, then turned around and walked back toward the trail. About halfway down, I passed a woman walking her dog. We exchanged a polite smile. She said, "Good morning." I said it back. Nothing more. She was beautiful, but I didn't feel the pull I used to feel. The desperate ache to impress, to initiate, to build something, just so I could feel whole. I was already whole, and that's what freedom really is. Not the absence of desire, but the absence of need. I don't need to be loved to know I have value. I don't need to be chosen to feel complete. I don't need the world to bend in my favor to remain at peace. As Marcus Aurelius once said, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. She didn't ruin my life. She revealed it. She showed me the places I was asleep, the places I had traded my power for affection, the blind spots where fantasy had replaced reality, and by walking away, she set the fire I needed to burn that illusion down. Now there's only solid ground beneath me. Later that week back at the workshop, the boys asked if I'd ever loved anyone. I smiled and said, "Yeah, once. Do you miss her?" One of them asked. I thought for a moment, then answered, "I miss the man I was trying to be when I was with her, but I don't miss needing her to feel like that man." They didn't fully understand, but they listened. And that was enough, Jordan. The quiet one stayed behind after the others left. He said, "You think love's not worth it?" I shook my head. "No, I think love's real, but only when it's clear. Love that costs you your self-respect isn't love. It's dependency. Love that forces you to abandon your purpose isn't love. It's confusion. And love that asks you to forget who you are is just fear dressed in longing." He nodded slowly, and then he said, "I want what you have." "Then build it," I told him. One day at a time. That's what this was all about. Not escaping the world, but facing it with eyes open, heart steady, and mind clear. I still believe in love, but not in the way I used to. I believe in love that doesn't consume, love that doesn't demand, love that walks beside you, not above you. And if it never comes again, that's fine too. Because now I'm not waiting to be chosen. I've already chosen myself. I've chosen silence over chaos, discipline over desire, reality over fantasy. And in that choice, I found peace.